The clash of iron rang through the mist-laden field as Thyra Jarlsdottir drove her axe into the skull of a Saxon warrior. Blood spattered her leather armor, joining the stains of countless battles before. Around her, the bodies of Saxons and Norsemen alike littered the muddy ground, their weapons still clutched in lifeless hands. "Thyra! The day is ours," called Ulf, her father's most trusted warrior, his beard matted with blood and sweat. "Their forces scatter like leaves in the wind." Thyra wiped her blade on the tunic of a fallen enemy and surveyed the carnage. The raid had gone well. The Saxon settlement had been rich with silver and provisions. The survivors fled into the forest, leaving their dead and wounded behind. "Gather our fallen," she commanded. "They deserve a proper journey to Valhalla." As the warriors of her clan collected their dead, Thyra walked the battlefield alone, ensuring no enemy remained to threaten them. Her fingers absently traced the iron pendant at her neck, a hammer of Thor blackened with age, the last gift from Gunnar before he fell 3 winters past. Her husband, her heart, slain by Saxon blades while she watched, powerless to save him. Since that day, she had sworn before the gods that love would never again weaken her sword arm. The only warmth she needed was the heat of battle, the only companionship the brotherhood of warriors who followed her father, Jarl Halfdan. "The gods have blessed our raid," she murmured, kicking over the body of a Saxon soldier. "Odin guides our—" A groan from a nearby thicket stopped her words. Thyra's hand flew to her axe as she approached cautiously, ready to dispatch any lingering threat. The underbrush parted under her boot to reveal a man, barely conscious, blood seeping from a wound in his side. Not one of hers, his clothing marked him clearly as an enemy. Yet he was no Saxon. The man wore the attire of a Dane, though from a rival clan, the Wolfborn of the eastern fjords. Their Jarl, Sturkar, had sworn blood feud against her family 3 generations past. The man's dark hair was matted with blood, his face smeared with dirt and gore, but she could see the strength in his features even as life ebbed from him. "Kill me and be done with it, Shield Maiden," he rasped in their shared tongue, his eyes, startlingly blue, finding hers with unexpected clarity. Thyra raised her axe, the decision simple. One less Wolfborn in the world could only please the gods. One less enemy to threaten her clan. One stroke would end him. Yet she hesitated. Around his neck hung a pendant identical to her own, Thor's hammer, crafted from the same iron as hers. An omen, perhaps. Or mere coincidence. "What is your name, Wolfborn?" she demanded, axe still poised. "Dagr," he coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Dagr Palnasson." "Why do you fight alongside Saxons, Dagr Palnasson? Have you no honor?" He laughed, a broken sound that ended in a grimace of pain. "I fight alongside no Saxons. I was hunting alone when they ambushed me. Then your clan arrived, and I was caught between 2 enemies." Thyra narrowed her eyes. "You expect me to believe the Wolfborn send hunters this far west, alone? Believe what you will. I will soon feast in Valhalla, and your opinion matters little." The wound in his side continued to bleed freely. Without aid, he would be dead before nightfall. It would be a mercy to end him quickly. Her father would expect it. Her clan would demand it. The blood feud must be honored. But the sight of Thor's hammer at his throat gave her pause. The Allfather worked in mysterious ways, and to ignore a sign might invite his displeasure. "Thyra!" Ulf called from across the field. "We must move before darkness falls." She made her decision quickly. "Tell no one you have seen me," she said to Dagr. "I will return." When the warriors had gathered their plunder and begun the march back to their ships, Thyra slipped away, claiming she needed to offer private thanks to the gods for their victory. No one questioned her. She had earned such respect through years of fierce loyalty and courage. She found Dagr where she had left him, his breathing shallow but steady. She knelt beside him and examined the wound more closely. "You returned," he said weakly. "To finish me?" "If the gods wished you dead, they would have guided my axe earlier," she replied, removing herbs and bandages from her pouch. "I will not defy their will by letting you die now." "Why?" His eyes, though clouded with pain, searched her face for answers. "The hammer at your throat," she said simply, touching her own pendant. "The gods speak through such signs." She cleaned his wound, a deep gash that had thankfully missed vital organs, and packed it with herbs to fight the rot before binding it tightly. He would live if infection did not set in. "Can you walk?" she asked. "Not far," he admitted. "There is a shepherd's hut abandoned near the forest edge. I will help you there." Supporting his weight against her shoulder, Thyra led Dagr slowly through the fading light to the crude stone structure. Inside, old straw covered the floor, and a stone hearth stood cold against one wall. "Your clan will miss you," he said as she eased him down onto the straw. "They believe I commune with the gods," she replied, gathering wood for a fire. "They will not search for me until morning." As flames caught and spread warmth through the small space, Thyra studied the wounded Dane. In the firelight, she could see he was perhaps 30 winters, his body bearing the scars of many battles. A warrior of reputation, no doubt. "Why were you truly here, alone in Saxon territory?" she asked. Dagr's eyes met hers. "I seek the man who killed my brother. A Saxon lord named Evald. I tracked him to these lands." "Blood vengeance," she nodded. "This I understand." "And you?" he asked. "What brings Jarl Halfdan's daughter so far from the northern fjords? Your reputation reaches even to our shores." Thyra stiffened. "You know who I am? The widow warrior who leads her father's shield wall? Who has slain more men than winter has days?" He offered a weak smile. Few have not heard of Thyra Jarlsdottir. She felt a strange flush at his words, an unfamiliar warmth she quickly suppressed. "We raid for wealth and provisions. The season grows late, and winter stores must be filled." They fell into silence as night deepened around the hut. Thyra checked his bandages once more before settling against the opposite wall, her axe across her lap. "Sleep," she commanded. "I will keep watch." "You fear I might slit your throat while you slumber?" he asked. "I fear you might die without someone to watch over you," she replied. "And I would have answers from you come morning." Dawn found them both still alive, Dagr having survived the night without fever taking hold, Thyra having maintained her vigil despite exhaustion pulling at her limbs. She changed his bandages, noting with satisfaction that the wound looked clean. "Your skill with healing rivals your reputation with an axe," he observed. "A warrior who cannot tend wounds is of little use on long campaigns," she replied. "You did not have to help me," he said more seriously. "Our clans have been enemies since before either of us drew breath." Thyra's hand went to her pendant. 3 winters passed. I watched my husband die on a battlefield much like yesterday's. Since then, I have sworn to follow only the will of the gods. When I saw this, she touched the hammer at his throat, I knew the All-Father had plans I could not understand. "I am sorry for your loss," Dagr said, surprising her with the gentleness in his voice. "I, too, know what it is to watch those you love die before you." Something in his tone made her look at him more closely. "Your brother?" "And my wife, Frydis. Taken by sickness 2 summers past." His eyes clouded with memory. "I swore I would never again let anyone close enough to leave such a wound when they departed. A kinship of grief passed between them, unspoken but profound. Two warriors who had built walls around their hearts, finding unexpected recognition in an enemy. "I must return to my clan," Thyra said, breaking the silence. "They will search for me soon." "And I must continue my hunt," Dagr replied, attempting to sit up. "You will tear your wound open," she scolded. "Rest here another day. The Saxon lord you seek has fled north. You will not catch him in your condition." "How do you know where he has gone?" "We attacked his settlement. I heard his men speaking of a northern fortress where they would regroup." She hesitated. "I could tell you more when your strength returns." The offer surprised them both. Helping an enemy was one thing, the god sign had demanded that much. But aiding him in his quest? That was another matter entirely. "Why would you help me find Eveld?" Dagr asked, his eyes narrowed. Thyra considered her answer carefully. "The blood feud between our clans began before we were born, over grievances neither of us witnessed. But the man who killed your brother still draws breath. That is a wrong I understand wanting to right." He studied her face, searching for deceit and finding none. "Then I will wait," he finally said. "One day." She nodded and gathered her weapons. "I will return when I can, with food and fresh water." As Thyra walked back toward her clan's camp, confusion clouded her thoughts. Why had she offered to help him? The blood feud between their families had claimed dozens of lives over generations. Yet something about Dagr Palnasson called to her, perhaps the shared grief, perhaps the matching pendants, perhaps something she dared not name. Her clan had made camp near their beach longships, preparing for the journey home. They greeted her with relief, having grown concerned at her long absence. "The gods required much of me," she explained when her father questioned her. "They have shown me visions I must interpret." Jarl Halfdan, his grey beard braided with gold rings that signified his status, nodded solemnly. "What do the gods reveal, daughter?" Thyra thought quickly. "That our journey is not yet complete. The Saxon Lord Eveld escaped north. The Allfather would have us pursue him." A murmur went through the gathered warriors. They had already claimed significant plunder, and home beckoned after weeks of raiding. "We have wealth enough," one man called out. "Why risk more battles when winter approaches?" "The visions do not explain all," Thyra replied. "But they were clear, there is purpose in this pursuit." She turned to her father. "I asked permission to take a small party north, to scout this Saxon lord's fortress. The main force can remain with the ships." Halfdan studied his daughter's face. Since Gunnar's death, Thyra had become his most reliable warrior, never swayed by emotion or weakness. If she claimed the god-sent visions, he had no reason to doubt her. "Take 5 men," he decided. "Scout only. Return in 3 days, and we will decide our course then." Thyra bowed her head in acknowledgement, silently asking Freya's forgiveness for the deception. That evening, as her chosen warriors prepared for the scouting mission, she slipped away again, carrying food and a water skin to the shepherd's hut. Dagr sat against the wall when she entered, his color improved, though pain still lined his face when he moved. "Your wound heals well," she observed, handing him bread and dried meat. "Thanks to your skill," he replied, accepting the food gratefully. "Have you come to share news of Eveld?" Thyra settled across from him. "I leave tomorrow with a small scouting party. We will locate his fortress to the north." Dagr's eyebrows rose. "Your Jarl agreed to this?" "My father believes I follow a vision from the gods," she said, a hint of guilt coloring her voice. "In some ways, perhaps I do. Why risk your standing for a blood feud not your own?" She met his gaze steadily. I ask myself the same question. I have no answer that satisfies me. They sat in companionable silence as Dagr ate. When he finished, he gestured to her pendant. You said it was a gift from your husband. Thyra's fingers touched the iron hammer. Gunnar gave it to me on our wedding day. He said Thor's strength would protect me when he could not. Her voice grew distant. He was the one who needed protection in the end. Mine was my brother's, Dagr said softly, touching his own pendant. Given to me before his final battle, though neither of us knew it would be his last. The gods work through such tokens, Thyra said. Perhaps they brought us together for a purpose beyond our understanding. Dagr studied her face in the dim light. Few would see divine purpose in aiding an enemy. Are you my enemy, Dagr Palnasson? She asked. Or merely a man born to a clan that once wronged mine? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Neither had personal cause to hate the other, yet generations of bloodshed separated their people. I have killed men of your clan in battle, he admitted. As you have likely killed wolf-born warriors. In open combat, with honor, she replied. Not in blood feud or treachery. His eyes held hers. Then perhaps we are not enemies, Thyra Jarlsdottir. Perhaps we are simply two warriors whose paths the Norns have woven together. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of common ground where only enmity had existed before. Thyra felt a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the small fire burning in the hearth. I must return before I am missed, she said, rising abruptly. Tomorrow we ride north. Can you travel by then? Dagr pushed himself to his feet with effort, testing his strength. If need be, I can ride. Meet me at the forked oak beyond the western ridge when the sun reaches midpoint tomorrow, she instructed. I will tell my men you are a trader from the southern settlements who knows the Saxon lands well. Your men will not question a stranger joining them. They trust my judgment, she said, then added with a hint of pride, I have earned that much. When she left the hut, confusion clouded Thyra's thoughts once more. The man she was helping belonged to the clan her father had cursed 1,000 times. Yet she felt drawn to him, his strength, his honor, the grief that mirrored her own. It was madness, surely. Or perhaps, truly, the will of the gods. The next day, Thyra led her small band north, with Dagr joining them as planned. She introduced him as Dagr the trader, and her warriors accepted him without question. Her word was enough. If they noticed how she rode close beside him, watching for signs of weakness from his wound, none mentioned it. By nightfall, they had traveled far enough to make camp in a sheltered valley. As her men prepared the evening meal, Thyra and Dagr studied the surrounding terrain. Eadald's fortress lies beyond that ridge, Dagr said, pointing north. My sources told me it is well defended but has a weakness on its eastern wall. How do you know so much about Saxon defenses? Thyra asked. A shadow crossed his face. My brother and I spent many seasons raiding these lands. We learned their ways, their strengths and weaknesses. His voice lowered. The last raid, Eadald was waiting for us. Someone had betrayed our plans. You suspect treachery among your own people. I have suspicions, he admitted. But no proof. As darkness fell, they rejoined the others around the campfire. One of the warriors, a man named Bjorn who had fought alongside Gunnar, studied Dagr with narrowed eyes. You seem skilled with that sword for a trader, he observed. Dagr met his gaze calmly. Even traders must defend their wares on long journeys. And that scar along your neck. Bjorn pressed. Looks like a blade that came very close to sending you to the gods. Bjorn, Thyra warned, our guest deserves respect. Of course, Thyra, Bjorn nodded, though suspicion remained in his eyes. I meant no disrespect. Later, as the men slept, Thyra took first watch. Dagr joined her at the perimeter of their camp. Your man Bjorn does not trust me, he said quietly. Bjorn was my husband's closest friend, she replied. He has appointed himself my protector since Gunnar fell. He is loyal, Dagr acknowledged. A worthy quality. They stood in silence, watching the moonlight play across the valley. Tomorrow we will scout the fortress, Thyra said eventually. What will you do when you find Ethild? Kill him, Dagr answered simply. Honor demands it. She studied his profile, strong and determined in the moonlight. And after? He turned to face her. After? He seemed not to have considered what would come next. I return to my clan, I suppose. To continue the blood feud against my family, she asked, the question sharper than she intended. Dagr was quiet for a long moment. The feud began when your grandfather killed mine over accusations of stolen gold. For generations, our families have killed one another in vengeance for those deaths. And you would continue this cycle. I have never sought out your kin to kill them, he said. I have defended my clan when attacked, as any warrior would. But I have no thirst for your blood, Thyra Jarlsdottir. His eyes met hers. Especially not now. The intensity of his gaze made her heart quicken. She looked away, unsettled by the feeling. Since Gunnar's death, she had been ice and iron, impervious to such emotions. Get some rest, she said. Your wound still needs healing. The next morning, they crept to a vantage point overlooking Ethild's fortress. The Saxon stronghold was indeed well defended, wooden palisades surrounded by a deep ditch, with guards patrolling the walls. There, Dagr pointed to the eastern wall. The palisade is lower there, and the ground rises slightly. A small force could scale it in darkness. You plan to attack? Thyra asked, surprised. You are one wounded man against dozens. I did not say it would be easy, he replied grimly. But blood demands blood. It would be suicide, she insisted. Dagr's jaw tightened. What would you have me do? Return home without avenging my brother? Where is the honor in that? Thyra considered the fortress thoughtfully. Not suicide, she said slowly. But a raid. My father's forces are not far. With what we've learned, we could attack in force. Why would your clan help me avenge my brother? The Saxons are enemies to all our people, she reasoned. And there would be plunder. My father would not refuse such an opportunity. Dagr studied her face. You would convince your father to aid a wolf-born. I would tell him of a vision, that the gods wish us to strike this fortress. The rest need not be mentioned. His hand found hers in the grass between them. You risk much, Thyra. The touch of his fingers sent warmth up her arm. She did not pull away. Perhaps the gods truly do guide us, she murmured. That evening, as they made camp, Bjorn approached Thyra privately. This trader, he said in a low voice, I do not trust him. Your concern is noted, she replied. But unnecessary. There is something familiar about him, Bjorn persisted. The way he carries himself. The way he speaks. He is no trader, Thyra. She met his gaze steadily. What are you suggesting? I don't know yet, he admitted. But I will watch him closely. Thyra nodded, her heart beating faster. If Bjorn recognized Dagr as a wolf-born warrior, everything would unravel. Do what you must, she said. But remember, I vouched for him. The tension in the camp was palpable as they prepared to return to the main force the following morning. Dagr kept his distance from Bjorn, sensing the man's suspicion. Thyra found herself constantly watching them both, alert for any sign of confrontation. They reached the Viking encampment by midday, where Jarl Halfdan awaited their report. The Saxon fortress is vulnerable on its eastern wall, Thyra explained, outlining what they had discovered. With our full force, we could take it before they realize their weakness. Halfdan stroked his beard thoughtfully. And this fortress holds enough wealth to justify the risk. Ethild is a wealthy lord, Dagr spoke up. His raids on coastal settlements have filled his coffers with silver and slaves. The Jarl's eyes narrowed as he studied the stranger. You seem well informed, trader. I have traveled these lands extensively, Dagr replied smoothly. Information is as valuable as goods in my profession. Halfdan turned back to Thyra. And the gods? Do they still guide you in this matter? They do, father, she answered, hoping the lie did not show on her face. The visions continue. There is purpose in this raid beyond wealth. After a moment's consideration, Halfdan nodded. We attack tomorrow night. The gods have not led us astray thus far. As preparations for the raid began, Bjorn approached Dagr where he sat sharpening his sword. Fine blade for a trader, Bjorn commented, his tone deceptively casual. Norse-made, I'd wager. It has served me well, Dagr replied without looking up. Where did you say you hailed from? I didn't. Dagr's eyes finally met Bjorn's. Is there something you wish to ask directly, warrior? Bjorn leaned closer. I know what you are, he said quietly. The question is whether Thyra knows. Before Dagr could respond, Thyra appeared beside them. Bjorn, my father asks for you, she interrupted, her voice firm. When Bjorn had gone, she sat beside Dagr. He suspects, she said. He knows, Dagr corrected. It's only a matter of time before he tells your father. Thyra's hands clenched into fists. Then we must succeed tomorrow night. After Ethild falls, the truth can come out. And then? Dagr asked softly. What happens when your clan learns you've aided a wolfborn? She had no answer. The consequences would be severe, her father would see it as betrayal, her clan as dishonor. Yet she could not bring herself to regret her choices. One problem at a time, she finally said. First, we raid the fortress. That night, Thyra found no sleep. The weight of deception pressed heavily upon her. Worse still were the feelings growing within her, feelings she had sworn never to experience again after Gunnar's death. Dagr Palnasson had awakened something she thought long dead, and it terrified her more than any battle. The raid began the following evening, with 80 warriors scaling the eastern wall of Ethild's fortress under cover of darkness. Thyra fought at her father's side, her axe rising and falling in the familiar rhythm of combat. Dagr moved through the chaos with singular purpose, searching for the Saxon lord who had killed his brother. They found Ethild in the great hall, surrounded by his household guards. The Saxon lord was a massive man, his beard braided in the Norse style, a mockery of the people he had made his enemies. Wolfborn, he spat when he saw Dagr pushing through the guards toward him. Have you come to join your brother in death? I've come to send you to your Christian hell, Dagr replied, raising his sword. The two men clashed in the center of the hall as Vikings and Saxons battled around them. Thyra dispatched a guard with a swift axe blow, then turned to see Dagr driven to one knee by Ethild's superior strength. Your brother begged for mercy before the end, the Saxon taunted. Will you do the same? With a roar of rage, Dagr surged upward, but his wound had weakened him. Evil's blade sliced across his arm, drawing fresh blood. Without hesitation, Thyra threw herself into the fight, her axe catching Evil's sword arm. The Saxon howled in pain, turning his fury toward her. Together, she called to Dagr. Side by side, they engaged Evil, their weapons moving in concert as if they had fought together for years. When the Saxon lord lunged at Thyra, Dagr's blade found the gap in his armor. As he staggered back, Thyra's axe completed what Dagr had begun. Evil fell to his knees, blood pouring from his wounds. He looked up at Dagr with hatred in his eyes. "Your brother died a coward's death," he gasped. "My brother died with honor," Dagr replied, raising his sword for the final blow. "Something you know nothing about." As Evil's head rolled across the floor, a hush fell over the hall. The remaining Saxons, seeing their lord defeated, threw down their weapons. Thyra turned to Dagr, a smile of victory on her lips, only to see Bjorn standing behind them, his eyes wide with recognition. "Wolfborn," Bjorn whispered, looking at Dagr. "His Wolfborn." The word spread through the gathered Vikings like wildfire. Jarl Halfdan pushed through the crowd, his face thunderous. "Is this true?" he demanded, looking between Dagr and his daughter. Dagr straightened, making no attempt to deny it. "I am Dagr Palnasson of the Wolfborn clan. I came seeking the man who killed my brother." Halfdan's hand went to his sword. "A blood enemy standing among us, and my own daughter brought him here." His voice was deadly quiet. "Explain yourself, Thyra." The hall fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Thyra felt the weight of a lifetime of hatred and blood feud pressing down on her shoulders. "The gods guided my hand," she said firmly. "When I found him wounded on the battlefield, Thor's hammer hung at his throat, a twin to the one Gunnar gave me." She touched her pendant. "The Allfather sent a sign I could not ignore." "Signs?" Halfdan scoffed. "You betray your clan for superstition." "Not superstition," she insisted. "And not betrayal. The blood feud between our clans has claimed too many lives already. Perhaps the gods tire of it." "She saved my life," Dagr added, stepping forward. "And I have fought honorably at her side. The enemy we both faced is now dead." Halfdan's face remained hard. "One shared battle does not erase generations of bloodshed, Wolfborn." "Father," Thyra pleaded, "we have won a great victory here. Wealth fills this fortress. Can we not set aside old hatreds long enough to see that the gods have blessed us?" For a long moment, Halfdan said nothing. Then he turned to his warriors. "Take the Wolfborn prisoner. We will decide his fate when we return home." "No." Thyra moved to stand between Dagr and her clan. "If you take him, you take me as well." Shock rippled through the gathered Vikings. Bjorn stepped forward, his face pained. "Thyra, think of what you're saying," he urged. "This man is our enemy." "Is he?" she challenged. "Has he raised his sword against any of you here? Has he not fought alongside us honorably?" She turned to her father. "The blood feud began over stolen gold, yet no one living has seen this treasure. What if the theft never happened? What if generations have died for a lie?" Murmurs spread through the hall as warriors considered her words. Many had lost family to the feud with the Wolfborn, yet none could say they remembered how or why it truly began. Halfdan's eyes narrowed. "You would question the honor of your own grandfather. I question the wisdom of continuing to kill over wrongs so old that none can verify them," Thyra replied. "The gods sent me a sign when they placed Dagr in my path. I believe they wish the bloodshed to end." The Jarl studied his daughter's face, seeing the determination there and something more. something he had not seen since Gunnar's death. "You care for this wolfborn," he stated, not a question but a realization. Thyra did not deny it. "I have found honor in a man I was raised to hate. Perhaps there is wisdom in that." Halfdan looked to Dagr. "And you, wolfborn? Do you seek to end this feud?" "I came to these lands seeking only Ethel's death," Dagr answered honestly. "But I have found something I did not expect." His eyes met Thyra's. "Something I had sworn never to seek again after my wife's death." The hall fell silent as the implications of their words settled over the assembled warriors. Halfdan's hand remained on his sword hilt, his face unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "Take the plunder. We return home with the dawn." His eyes fixed on Dagr. "The wolfborn comes with us, not as prisoner, but as guest. The thing will decide what comes next." It was not forgiveness, but it was a beginning. As the Vikings secured the fortress and gathered their spoils, Thyra found Dagr in a quiet corner of the hall. "You should have let me face my fate alone," he said. "You risked everything." "The gods brought us together," she replied. "I will not defy their will by abandoning you now." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "And if the thing decides against us?" Thyra smiled, a fierce light in her eyes. "Then we will face that storm together, as we faced Etheld." The journey back to the Viking settlement was tense, with warriors keeping watchful eyes on Dagr. Yet none challenged Thyra's protection of him, out of respect for her if nothing else. Word of their approach, and their unusual guest, reached the settlement before them. When they arrived, the entire clan waited, curious and wary. Among them stood a figure Thyra had not expected to see, a grey-haired man leaning on a staff, his weathered face lined with wisdom. Volva, Jarl Halfdan greeted the seer with surprise. "What brings you from your solitude?" The old woman's eyes found Thyra and Dagr immediately. "Dreams," she answered. "Dreams of hammers forged as one, and blood feuds washed away by tides of truth." A murmur went through the gathered crowd. The Volva was respected and feared for her connections to the gods. Her presence lent weight to Thyra's claims of divine guidance. "What truth?" Halfdan demanded. "Summon the thing," the seer replied. "Let all hear what the gods have shown me." 3 days later, the thing assembled, the gathering of free men who would decide matters of importance for the clan. Jarl Halfdan sat in the judgment seat, with elders and respected warriors around him. Thyra and Dagr stood before them, side by side. The Volva spoke first, her voice carrying across the hushed gathering. 3 nights passed. As the moon waned, Odin himself came to me in dreams, she began. He showed me the beginning of the blood feud between the Jarlsson clan and the Wolfborn. She raised her staff, pointing to Halfdan. "Your grandfather accused Daggers of stealing gold, a great treasure hoard discovered on a raid. But the truth was hidden. The gold was lost in a storm at sea as they returned. Neither stole from the other, yet blood has flowed for generations over this fossud." Shock rippled through the assembly. Halfdan's face darkened with disbelief. "You expect us to accept this dream as truth?" he challenged. "I expect you to hear the will of the gods," the Volva replied calmly. "Odin has grown weary of this senseless bloodshed." He placed Thor's hammer at both their throats. She gestured to Thyra and Dagr's matching pendants, as a sign they should unite what hatred has divided. "And how are we to verify this tale of lost gold?" one elder asked skeptically. The Volva smiled. "The Allfather provided for that as well. In my dream, he showed the location where the ship went down, a narrow strait between 2 islands east of here. The wreckage remains, with the gold still aboard." Murmurs grew louder as people considered the implications. If the seer spoke truly, generations had died for nothing. Dagr stepped forward. "I will speak," he said, his voice carrying across the gathering. All eyes turned to him. "I came to these lands seeking vengeance against the Saxon who killed my brother. I found that, with Thyra's help." He looked around at the assembled Vikings. "I have no desire to continue a blood feud based on lies. If the wreckage can be found, if the gold still lies beneath the waves, will that be proof enough to end the killing?" Halfdan leaned forward in his seat. "And if we agree? What then, Wolfborn? You return to your clan and we to ours, with promises of peace." "I propose more," Dagr replied steadily. "An alliance, sealed in the traditional manner." Thyra's heart quickened as she realized what he meant. She stepped forward to stand beside him. "I would take Dagr Palnasson as my husband," she declared, her voice clear and strong. "Let our union heal the wounds between our clans." The assembly erupted in a mixture of outrage and amazement. Bjorn pushed to the front of the crowd. "Thyra, think of Gunnar," he protested. "Would you dishonor his memory by marrying our enemy?" "Gunnar would want me to follow the will of the gods," she replied firmly. "And my heart." The admission silenced many. Since Gunnar's death, Thyra had been as cold as winter ice. To hear her speak of her heart moved even those most opposed to the Wolfborn. Halfdan raised his hand for silence. "This is unprecedented," he said gravely. "Yet the Volva's words cannot be ignored." He turned to Dagr. "If we find this shipwreck, if the gold is there as she claims, what guarantees do we have that your clan will honor this peace?" "I am my father's heir," Dagr answered. "When I return with proof of the truth and a bride from your clan, he will listen. He has lost as many loved ones to this feud as you have." For a long moment, Halfdan was silent, weighing the proposal. Finally, he nodded. "We will send ships to search for the wreck," he decided. "If the Volva's vision proves true, we will consider this alliance." His eyes narrowed. "Until then, you remain our guest, Dagr Palnasson." The assembly dispersed, leaving Thyra and Dagr standing before the judgment seat. Halfdan beckoned his daughter closer. "You love this man?" he asked quietly when the others had gone. "Truly?" Thyra met her father's eyes. "I did not seek it," she answered honestly. "After Gunnar, I swore never to open my heart again. But the gods had other plans." Halfdan sighed heavily. "I have never denied you anything you truly wanted, daughter. But this—" He shook his head. "Be certain. Be very certain." Later, walking along the shore with Dagr, Thyra felt a strange peace despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. The sea stretched before them, hiding the truth that could unite their people, or doom their hopes. "If they don't find the shipwreck," Dagr said, voicing her unspoken fear, "what then?" Thyra's hand found his. "Then we find another way. The gods did not bring us together to abandon us now." "I never thought to love again," he admitted, turning to face her. "After Freydis died, I believed that part of me died with her." "As did I when Gunnar fell," Thyra replied softly. "Yet here we stand." Dagr touched the hammer at her throat, then his own. "Perhaps the gods are wiser than we give them credit for." 3 weeks passed before the search party returned. Thyra and Dagr waited anxiously as the ships approached the shore. The lead vessel flew a red banner, the signal they had found something. The entire clan gathered as sailors unloaded a sea chest, encrusted with barnacles and sea growth. When pried open, it revealed gold arm rings, coins, and jeweled weapons, unmistakably Viking treasure. It was as the Volva said, the ship's captain reported. A wreck in the strait between the islands. This chest was caught in the remains of what was once the ship's hull. Halfdan examined the treasure, his face solemn. "So it is true," he murmured. Generations of blood spilled over gold that neither side possessed. He looked up at Thyra and Dagr, who stood hand in hand before him. The Jarl's weathered face showed the weight of his decision. "Send word to the Wolfborn," he announced. "Tell them we have discovered the truth of the feud's beginning. Tell them their heir has found favor with my daughter." He straightened to his full height. "And tell them that Jarl Halfdan proposes an end to bloodshed, sealed by marriage." The messenger returned a fortnight later with representatives from the Wolfborn clan, including Dagr's father, Jarl Palni. The two Jarls met in Halfdan's great hall, decades of hatred evident in their guarded postures and cold eyes. Thyra and Dagr stood between them as the recovered treasure was displayed. "The Volva spoke truly," Halfdan began. "The gold was lost at sea, not stolen by either of our ancestors." Palni, a bear of a man with a face scarred from countless battles, studied the treasure carefully. "So it would seem," he acknowledged reluctantly. "A mistake that has cost many lives." "A mistake we can now correct," Dagr said, stepping forward. "Father, I ask for your blessing to wed Thyra Jarlsdottir and end this feud forever." The elder Palnasson's eyes moved to Thyra, assessing her with the cold calculation of a warrior. "She is your enemy's daughter," he stated flatly. "She saved my life when she could have taken it," Dagr replied. "She helped me avenge Hrolf when she had no cause to. She stood against her own clan to protect me." His voice softened. "And I love her." Something in his words seemed to reach the hard-hearted Jarl. Perhaps it was the mention of Hrolf, Dagr's fallen brother, or perhaps the simple truth of his son's feelings. "And you, Shield Maiden?" Palni asked, addressing Thyra directly. "Why would you bind yourself to a clan that has killed your kin?" Thyra met his gaze unflinchingly. "Because the cycle of vengeance must end somewhere," she answered. "Because the gods brought us together for this purpose." She took Dagr's hand. "And because your son has awakened in me what I thought died with my husband." For a long moment, the hall was silent as the two Jarls considered what lay before them, an end to generations of bloodshed, a new beginning forged in the fires of shared grief and newfound love. Finally, Halfdan extended his arm toward Palni. "Let it end," he said simply. "Let it end with them." After a moment's hesitation, the Wolfborn Jarl clasped the offered arm. "Let it end," he agreed. 3 days later, as spring breeze carried the scent of new growth across the fjord, Thyra stood before the assembled clans in her finest attire, a blue dress embroidered with silver, Gunnar's hammer hanging proudly at her throat. Her hair, usually bound for battle, flowed freely down her back, woven with small braids and silver beads. Dagr awaited her beside the sacred oak where marriages were performed, looking more a Jarl's son than the wounded warrior she had found on the battlefield. His eyes never left her as she approached. The Volva raised her staff as the couple clasped hands before her. "The Allfather works in ways we cannot always understand," she intoned. "He takes life, but also grants it anew. He ends what must end, and begins what must begin." She bound their hands with a cord of red wool. "Let these two, once divided by blood feud, now be united by love and the will of the gods." Dagr's eyes held Thyra's as they spoke the traditional vows, promises of loyalty, protection, and partnership. When they exchanged rings of gold from the recovered treasure, a cheer rose from both clans, hesitant at first but growing stronger. "The gods are pleased," the Volva declared as thunder rumbled in the distance, Thor's blessing on their union. That night, as celebrations continued in the great hall, Thyra and Dagr slipped away to the shore where they had walked during those uncertain days of waiting. "Did you ever imagine, when you found me wounded, that we would stand here as husband and wife?" Dagr asked, his arm around her waist. Thyra smiled, leaning against his shoulder. Never. I had sworn to never love again. As had I, he admitted. Yet here we stand. She touched the hammer at her throat, then reached for his. Perhaps Gunnar and Freydis sent us to each other, she said softly. Perhaps they watch from Valhalla and smile to see us heal. Dagr kissed her then, under the vast canopy of stars. To new beginnings, he murmured against her lips. To new beginnings, she agreed, and old wounds healed. Behind them, the sounds of celebration echoed across the water, two clans becoming one, a blood feud ended by love and truth. And above, the stars of the northern sky wheeled in their ancient patterns, as the Norns continued to weave the fates of men and women who dared to challenge the stories they had been given. For Thyra and Dagr, warriors who had sworn never to love again, the greatest battle had not been fought with axe or sword, but with the courage to open hearts long closed by grief and honor the truth the gods had placed before them.